Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a great discussion planned for you. We are joined by Congressman Mike Carey of Ohio and Ezra Escudero of our AFP Ohio chapter. Folks have obviously seen the news by now. Gas prices again hit a record high today. They've been skyrocketing for months now. This is nothing new. And for those of you that have tuned into a couple of these, you know what the major drivers are as far as the Biden administration spending and regulatory policies. And so we'll dive in today with Congressman Carey on kind of what he's seeing and hearing on Capitol Hill, what he's seeing and hearing in his district. And then Ezra can tell us a little bit about the campaign that Americans for Prosperity has launched to educate folks in Ohio and elsewhere across the country. So Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today. I think I'll just kind of kick it off. Folks are familiar by now with the Biden agenda, but in your opinion, what are kind of the 2 or 3 major factors, major decisions that this administration and this congressional leadership have made over the last year and a half that are making prices skyrocket?
Well, I mean, I think obviously banning the Keystone Pipeline. You guys, your organization has been on the front lines of energy policy well back into the time of cap and trade. So you guys have a wealth of information that I'm glad you're putting it out to the people that are watching this program. This administration with the Keystone Pipeline, with banning drilling on so much of the federal lands, and then they want you to rush to go to EVs or electric vehicles when all the parts of those products or of the EVs are coming from China. We could mine the products that are needed to make those EVs, but it's on the federal lands that this administration doesn't want you to mine on. So, banning federal leases, eliminating the Keystone Pipeline, it has consequences. And I think, everybody that, I just talked to my director of scheduling. We were driving back from the airport here to DC this morning, and he was telling me that in one place in Alexandria, the gas was $4.50 a gallon. He literally went there the next day and it was $5.05 a gallon. So this is not something that's just affecting people in Ohio, but it's affecting people nationwide. So I think those are some of the energy issues that we're facing, and it's really unfortunately it's disproportionately affecting the people that least afford it.
Absolutely. And so the kind of 2 issues that we've been pointing to, one is on the reg side, particularly with energy, and the other is spending. Now, we've seen kind of ebbs and flows where activists get it, right? They know that overspending and driving the debt eats into our economy and slows growth. But we're now seeing people kind of outside of the political bubble really make that connection as inflation crosses 8%. How can you kind of walk through the impact that particularly the president's $2 trillion bill last spring that Democrats passed on a partisan basis, what impact has this overspending had and why is it driving inflation?
Well, I mean, anybody knows that when you spend more money that you don't have, it's going to cause inflation. I mean, we're seeing, what we're seeing now with interest rates. I mean, this is something that people haven't seen in years. I mean, interest rates are creeping up. And, for somebody that's looking to buy a home, that's going to hurt them. And so I think people now are understanding, hey, free money sounds great, but there's always a cost. And the cost is higher gas prices, higher interest rates, food becoming more scarce. I mean, that's the one thing that we see. I mean, I live in a very urban area and in downtown Columbus, Ohio. And I will tell you, I mean, there are a number of times when I go to the grocery store, my wife asks me to pick up a few things. I got to come back with half of them because it's just not there. And we're seeing that not just, not just in central Ohio and in Columbus, but we're seeing that nationwide. So people are understanding free money is only free for so long. And, hopefully, I think that's why you're seeing, I believe that's why you're seeing the president's numbers dip to levels that we've never seen before, because this is just a misguided policy. I said this before. We had a rally up in Delaware, Ohio, just about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. And I told the crowd, I said, there was a time when I was growing up that we watched Schoolhouse Rock. And there was a thing, I'm just a bill, I'm only a bill, I'm living here on Capitol Hill. And it kind of went through the process of how a bill becomes a law. I don't think anybody in the Democratic Party or the Democratic leadership ever watched that cartoon. And the reason I say that is because one of the last bills we had, I get a bill at 3 o'clock in the morning, $1 trillion worth of spending, 2,700 pages, and I'm expected to vote on this in 7 hours. mean, it's lunacy. So I think we got to go back to regular order, and I think people will see what these bills actually mean.
Yeah, that's exactly right. One of the things that our policy team here pointed out is the president, as far as trying to shift the narrative, he says, other countries are also seeing inflation, but they're not seeing it at the levels we are. The San Francisco Federal Reserve pointed out that bill alone, the so-called American Rescue Plan, contributed at least 3 percentage points to inflation by the end of last year. So, how do you sort of figure, as far as what the president is saying, blaming it on companies or blaming it on COVID? What do you make of that, and what's kind of the truth there?
Well, he's wrong. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. I mean, when we started to see inflation creep up, we didn't have inflation until we started having these spending sprees. And so I think people that understand history understand, again, you spend more of the government money that you can't pay for. It's going to have these inflationary price increases that we're seeing in every aspect. I talked to a group of farmers. This has probably been about a month ago, and the cost of fertilizer has went up like 400%. I mean, that is going to trickle down to the person that's going to the grocery store to buy milk. I mean, that when you have 400% increases, and that's even if they can find it. That's the other issue. We're having people with the supply chain issues. So my thought is that, what we've got to do, again, go back to regular order in the House. I mean, I'm relatively new. I've only been here 6 months. I had my 6-month anniversary literally last week. But the thing that I have seen from these politicians is that they've never signed the front of a paycheck. They've certainly signed the back of a paycheck, and that's what they've been doing to the American taxpayers. And I think what we're going to do, and I'm committed. I truly believe the leadership, the Republican leadership, is committed to making sure that we right the wrongs of the past. And I think you're going to have this commitment to America, which we're going to roll out probably in the next couple of months. And it's going to get us right back on the pathway to growth and opportunity, which is what the American public want. And that's why they're going to elect us in overwhelming numbers, I think, here in November.
Absolutely. And I want to come back to that. Ezra, I want to pull you in. You've been on the ground in Ohio. You all have had a couple events. Can you tell us a little bit about the true cost of Washington tour, what we're doing, and what the real purpose is as far as educating folks and activating them with what's going on?
Thanks, Akash. Yes, we're traveling around the state to help raise awareness for our friends and neighbors about the impact of inflation and how, as the congressman mentioned, so many bad policy decisions are fueling inflation, have given us financial uncertainty. They're serving as band-aids and scapegoating in the short term, where a much better approach would actually fuel innovation instead of inflation, give us more financial security, and focus on energy abundance. On May 6th, not too long ago, we were in Butler County at Thornton's gas station on Route 4. And we talked to a number of folks. We were giving out gas cards, again, to get attention. WCPO was there and covered the event. And our state director, Donovan, talked to a man named Chris, who said, we really are paying more for gas and getting less. He spoke to a single mother who was on her lunch break and stopped to get gas because it was payday Friday. And a salesman who's traveling around in his territory, putting serious miles, visiting clients, but consequently having to pay more out of pocket. Now, Congressman Carey, you've got a very broad district that covers a very diverse spectrum of Ohioans, from German Village and Metro Columbus area out to some more rural counties. We're hearing a lot of concerns from our friends and neighbors. I'm sure you've got to be hearing some of these same concerns too.
Well, I have. I mean, the district that I have, we had a little issue of redistricting. I think a lot of people have seen the redistricting that's going on across the country because of the census. My district literally goes from a district that was about a county away from West Virginia and Kentucky to my new district, which is going to be a county away from Indiana. So it is within the next few months, I will have represented about 20% of the state of Ohio in a year. I mean, which is amazing. But when you look at the folks that are in my Appalachian counties, which have, counties that I have worked in, I've been in the energy industry for the last, 25 years of my life. And I talked to them, what we're seeing, it didn't have to be this way. We could be energy. We were just in energy independent a year and a half ago. We could be doing that again. And what you're finding what you're finding in Europe right now is there's a rush by the publicly traded European companies to divest themselves of anything Russian. So that's Russian natural gas, that's Russian oil, that's Russian coal, steel, whatever. But when you're looking at the commodities like for energy, there is a very good possibility that we could see a growth in our domestic production, but we can't do that when you stop federal leases. You just can't do it. The Biden administration says, well, it's the big bad gas companies, and they've got 9,000 leases and they're not drilling. Well, no, that's not the truth. What the truth is you're not going to be able to drill, number one, if you don't have a pipeline that's going to be able to get your product to market. Number two, when you have this ESG stuff that is allowing people, that will not allow people to invest into fossil energy. So, my thought is let's take off the shackles of this economy. Let's stop this idea that we can somehow tax our way into prosperity. Let's stop the idea that we can somehow restrict the amount of energy resources that we have in this country and liberate it and say, okay, we're going to do everything we can to unleash America's natural resources. And I will tell you, I think that within the next year and a half, 2 years, if we stop these draconian the draconian policies of this administration, we'll be energy independent again, and we'll see gas going down. And those, that single mother that was going to the gas station, she's going to thank us for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is pretty ironic with hearing from the administration and the Democratic majority in Congress that on one hand, they're asking companies to increase oil production. On the other hand, the administration is pushing a regulatory agenda that's intended to tamp down on it. And the irony that our policy team likes to point out is the regulations they're placing on the energy industry, they aren't only inhibiting traditional sources of energy. When you look at NEPA and some of these regulations, they're also inhibiting sort of newer renewable sources of energy too. To Ezra's point, they're really just inhibiting innovation across the board. So, as far as a different approach, Congressman, when we look at kind of the role that the regulation of the agencies should play, what does good look like? Whether it's oil and gas, renewable energy, really anything that affects industries and consumers, what does good look like that government should be doing that it's not right now?
Well, I think, we're going to be putting together a plan here in Congress with Congressman Garrett Graves out of Louisiana. I think is going to be heading it up for us when we come in the next year. But I think what we have to understand, I'm about all of the above. I think you need to have renewables. I think you need to have oil and gas. I think you need to have coal. You need to have nuke. I mean, if any one issue showed us that we needed to have all of the above, you look at what happened in Texas just about 2 years ago, right? And so we know that we have to invest in all these natural resources. My opinion is we can do the things that are necessary to get the products to market, whether it's oil and gas, open up these pipelines, issue these pipelines. I mean, that's something that's really simple. I mean, you put a pipeline in. I mean, I'd much rather be negotiating with Canada for fossil energy than I would be Venezuela or Iran let's focus on working with our allies and opening up the pipelines, number one. Number two, we got to stop the federal leases. I mean, we got to open up these federal leases. I mean, this is just insane that we have these natural resources here in this country. And from a renewable standpoint, let's look at the mining. I mean, we can get the rare earth materials. We can get the copper. We can get all of these things that are needed to the explosion of the renewable industry. We can get those here in this country, but you got to open up federal leases. So we've got to do those. I think those two things would go a long way to helping us grow this economy and helping us continue to be energy independent well into the future and stop relying on our enemies to have cheap gas. I mean, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to do it for us. Absolutely.
That's why Americans for Prosperity is supporting the Strategic Production Response Act authored 100%. By Patrick Morris Rogers, Congressman from Washington. That should be a last-ditch thing, right? Particularly at a time of such uncertainty in the global energy markets. We shouldn't be tapping into that just because this administration is actively inhibiting energy development. So that's something, to Ezra's point, as we're traveling around the country, reaching out to sort of independent moderates, folks that are not really engaged in politics. It's one of the things we're talking about, because inflation doesn't care who you voted for, right? To Ezra's point, it's hitting salesmen, business leaders, single moms, you name it. So Ezra, what do we have to look forward to on the ground? We're going to be in states all across the country. What are those events going to look like as we get through the summer into the fall?
Well, so far, what we already have on the calendar for this summer include visits to Youngstown, Steubenville, and Toledo. Those are already confirmed. We'd love to visit other parts of the state, the Dayton area, certainly here in Central Ohio, and Congressman, we'll be sure to let you know when we're in your district. Beyond that, we want to make sure every Ohioan hears this message, and would love to help promote the voice of reason.
Well, listen, I will tell you, Youngstown and Steubenville, and although they're not in my district, and I wish they were, because I spent a lot of time in both those towns. My wife's from just outside of Youngstown. That's really, when you look at Ohio, that really is the crossroads of, what made Ohio, Ohio. It was steel, coal, natural gas, both in the Mahoning Valley and in the Ohio Valley, which is more Steubenville area. I mean, these are the people that have lived through, the boom and bust cycle of the oil and gas industry and the coal industry and the steel industry. And so many of these people are living, unfortunately, living paycheck to paycheck. And what we've seen in Central Ohio, I mean, I fortunately represent an area that's very prosperous. We've just got Intel announced, and there's a lot of growth in Central Ohio. But in Eastern and Southeastern Ohio, this is an area that really is unfortunately disproportionately affected because of the energy prices. And these are the same people that for years and years and years were working in the energy industry. So, I applaud you guys for going out to Steubenville. It's a great town. I love Steubenville. I love Youngstown. Youngstown's one of my favorite cities. The Cavelli Center, I actually went there and saw Elton John. My wife told me it was the last time I was ever going to see Elton John. I think we've seen him like 4 other times. My wife's like an Elton John groupie, so I think they're wondering why I'm such a groupie of his. But at any rate, I mean, Youngstown, Steubenville, those are great areas to be in. But I'll tell you, it's all of Ohio, it's West Virginia, it's Western Pennsylvania, it's Kentucky. We got to right this wrong in terms of what we're doing with energy policy, and unless we do it in the next 2 years, I think people are really going to be hurt.
Absolutely.
Oh, truly. I mean, I'm from the Mansfield area, and growing up, we had so much industry there, just across 30 from the Youngstown area and on the way to Detroit and other great cities that built this country up. And these policies today are accelerating a lot of decline and preventing new growth.
Absolutely. And I think, you're even seeing politicians. I mean, I was watching and again, I'm relatively new, so I can still talk about politicians as politicians, and me not being one because I'm just new to this game, right? But I watched the Senate debate, and when I'm watching the Democrat ads and the Republican ads, they sound the same. It's the America First agenda. It's the agenda. We've got to stop China. We got to be energy independent. We got to cut taxes on the middle class. There is a third degree of separation from what the Democrats are saying in Ohio and what the Republicans are saying in Ohio. Now, the truth is, obviously, look at the policies that the Democrats supported.
That's right.
But people understand that we're going in the wrong direction. I don't care whether it's the border. I don't care whether it's energy. I don't care, drugs, you name it, crime. But I think people are getting that. And I think what you're going to see, and hopefully you'll have great turnout in those areas, but love for you to come to Piqua, love for you to come to Sydney. Those are parts of the new district. And, those are the farmers. Those are the folks that are, seeing that increase in fertilizer, seeing that increase in diesel. So, if you can get your tour to come over there, boy, I think it'd be great.
We'll make it happen, sir.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Congressman, for joining us. As Ezra mentioned, we're constantly adding new dates, new locations across the state of Ohio and really across the country. We'll be in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Indiana, you name it. So this tour is just getting started. Congressman Carey, we so appreciate you joining us today, your leadership on this issue. And and really advancing these key messages and key fights in Congress. Appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to our folks.
Great to be with you guys, and love to come back.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
Everyone else have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.